The first thing Mara Vale noticed about the northern estate was that the snow had no footprints. It covered the road in a flawless white sheet, climbed the black iron gates, and softened the jagged mountains beyond until the entire world looked untouched, as if no human being had ever dared to live beneath those peaks. Yet someone was waiting for her. He stood beside the gatehouse in a dark wool coat, broad-shouldered and motionless, watching the carriage approach with the kind of stillness that made Mara sit straighter despite herself. She had heard stories about the Ashbourne wolves since childhood. Every pack in the Western Territories had heard them. The Ashbournes were old blood, descended from an alpha line so powerful that even rival packs spoke their name carefully. The younger son, Adrian Ashbourne, was the man Mara had been promised to marry. He was handsome, charming, educated, and, according to everyone who knew him, destined to become one of the most respected alphas of his generation. His older brother was something else entirely. Lucian Ashbourne. The exile. The war commander. The wolf who had disappeared 3 years earlier after refusing the council's orders during a border conflict. Some said he had killed a dozen men. Others claimed he had saved an entire settlement and been punished because the council feared his influence. Mara had never met him. She had no intention of doing so. Her marriage to Adrian had been arranged when they were both children. An alliance between the Vale Pack and the Ashbourne Pack meant to end decades of distrust between their territories. She had spent years preparing for it. She knew what dress she would wear, what jewels her mother expected her to inherit, what traditions she would perform, and which members of the Ashbourne family she needed to impress. She had even practiced the ceremonial vow until she could speak it without looking at the page. What she had not prepared for was the man at the gate. As the carriage stopped, he stepped forward. The horses immediately became nervous. One stamped its hoof. The driver muttered a curse. Mara lifted the curtain. Their eyes met. Lucian's were silver-grey, unusually pale even for a wolf, and there was a thin scar cutting from the corner of his left eyebrow toward his temple. He did not bow. He did not smile. He simply looked at her as if he had been expecting her for years. "Lady Vale," he said. His voice was low enough that the snow seemed louder around it. Mara opened the carriage door herself. "You know who I am. Everyone here knows who you are." She stepped down carefully. "Then I assume you are Lucian." "I am." He glanced toward the estate. "You should not have come." Mara's fingers tightened around the fur of her cloak. "My fiancé is expecting me. That is precisely why you should not have come." Before she could answer, the estate doors opened in the distance and Adrian came running down the stone steps. His expression was completely different from his brother's. Warm. Excited. Almost boyish. "Mara." He crossed the courtyard and caught both her hands. "I thought the storm would delay you." It almost did. Adrian laughed and pulled her into an embrace. Over his shoulder, Mara saw Lucian walking away. He did not look back. She watched him disappear through the side entrance, leaving behind the unsettling certainty that her arrival had changed something before the wedding had even begun. That evening, the Ashbourne estate came alive. Servants carried lamps through long corridors. Musicians arrived from the southern valleys. Guests filled the dining hall, speaking in low voices while snow battered the windows. Mara sat beside Adrian at the head table and tried to ignore the empty chair across from her. Lucian did not attend dinner. Adrian noticed her glance. "Don't worry about him." Mara lowered her voice. "Does he live here?" Adrian's smile faded slightly. "Sometimes. I thought he was exiled." "He was." "Then why is he here?" Adrian looked toward the window. "Because my father is dying." The words changed the atmosphere between them. Mara turned. "I didn't know. He doesn't want anyone outside the family to know yet." Adrian's hand covered hers. "The council would use it against us." Mara nodded, but before she could respond, a crash erupted at the far end of the hall. Every wolf in the room turned toward the doors. A young servant stood frozen beside a shattered wineglass. Blood ran from his palm. Then a scream came from outside. The musicians stopped. Adrian rose. "Stay here." Mara followed him anyway. They rushed into the courtyard and found one of the guards collapsed beside the fountain. His throat was marked by 3 deep scratches. No wolf scent lingered around the body. That was the first impossible thing. The second was the message carved into the stone beneath him. Mara Vale will never be queen. Adrian's face hardened. Get everyone inside. Mara stared at the words. Who would do this? A voice answered from the darkness behind her. Someone who knows the old laws. Lucian stepped into the lantern light. He had removed his coat, revealing a black shirt and leather harness beneath it. His gaze moved from the dead guard to Mara. The wedding must be cancelled. Adrian's jaw tightened. You don't get to decide that. Lucian ignored him. There has been an attack on the eastern border. 3 patrols disappeared today. Adrian's expression changed. Why wasn't I told? Because father ordered the information suppressed. Lucian looked at Mara again. And because someone inside this house is helping the enemy. The courtyard erupted with questions, but Lucian raised one hand and silence followed. Mara watched the family around her. Adrian looked furious. Their mother looked frightened. Their father, carried by 2 servants onto the balcony, appeared suddenly older than he had at dinner. Then the old alpha spoke. Lucian. His voice was weak, but every wolf heard it. Take Mara upstairs. Adrian immediately stepped forward. Father, not you. The old man's eyes remained fixed on Lucian. Take her to the northern chamber. Lock the door. Mara's stomach tightened. Why? No one answered. Then her wolf spoke inside her mind for the first time since childhood. Run. Mara had always believed her wolf was unusually quiet. Now she understood why. Something had frightened it. Lucian approached her. Come with me. She did not move. Why should I trust you? His expression did not change. You shouldn't. That answer frightened her more than reassurance would have. Still, she followed him. They crossed the estate through a narrow corridor where the portraits of dead Ashbourne alphas watched from dark wooden frames. Lucian moved quickly, never looking behind him. Mara finally broke the silence. What do you know about me? Enough. That isn't an answer. Your mother died when you were 12. Mara stopped. Lucian stopped too. How do you know that? Because I was there. Her face went cold. No, you weren't. I was. He turned toward her. Your mother's carriage was attacked on the Western Road. You survived because a patrol found you beneath the wreckage. Mara remembered the fire. She remembered waking in a stranger's arms. She remembered a man's voice telling her not to close her eyes. But she had been too young to see his face. Lucian touched the scar above his eyebrow. I carried you out. Mara stared at him. Why didn't anyone tell me? Because your mother wasn't killed by bandits. The corridor seemed to narrow around her. What are you saying? She was assassinated. Mara's heartbeat thundered. By whom? Lucian looked toward the end of the corridor. The same people who are trying to stop your wedding. A howl sounded from outside. Then another answered it. Then dozens. Lucian's expression changed instantly. They're inside the perimeter. Mara heard glass breaking downstairs. Guards shouted. Someone screamed. Lucian seized her wrist. Now you trust me. I don't. Good. Stay close anyway. He dragged her toward a concealed door behind an old tapestry just as the hallway lights went out. Darkness swallowed them. Mara heard claws strike stone. A wolf growled somewhere nearby. Lucian pushed her into a narrow passage and closed the door. Whatever happens, he whispered, do not shift unless I tell you. Why? Because they are hunting your scent. Who are they? Rogues. How many? He listened. Too many. The hidden corridor descended beneath the estate. Mara's breathing became uneven as distant impacts shook dust from the ceiling. Lucian kept one hand against the wall and the other near the weapon at his belt. Where are we going? The old sanctuary. Does it have an exit? Yes. Where? Under the lake. Mara almost laughed from disbelief. You expect me to swim through a frozen lake? No. I expect you to trust me for 3 minutes. They reached a stone chamber filled with ancient carvings. In the center stood a circular platform covered in runes. Lucian placed his palm against the central symbol. Nothing happened. He tried again. The stone remained dark. "What's wrong?" Mara asked. He looked at her. "It recognizes blood." "Your blood?" "No." Understanding struck her slowly. "Mine." Lucian stepped aside. Mara placed her hand against the stone. The chamber exploded with light. Every rune ignited blue. Somewhere far above them, a horn sounded across the mountains. Lucian's face lost all color. "What?" Mara whispered. "Your bloodline isn't what you were told." The stone beneath her feet cracked open, revealing a staircase descending into darkness. Lucian stared down. "Your mother was not merely a member of the Veil Pack." Mara swallowed. "Then what was she?" "The last heir of the Moonfang line." The name meant nothing to her, but Lucian's expression told her everything. "What is Moonfang?" "The bloodline that ruled the northern territories before the Ashbournes." Mara stepped back. "That's impossible." "That's why they killed your mother." A roar shook the chamber. Stone fragments fell from the ceiling. Lucian grabbed Mara and pulled her down the newly revealed stairs as the sanctuary doors burst open behind them. They ran through darkness while the wolves above howled for her. At the bottom waited an underground river. An old wooden boat was tied to a stone post. Lucian cut the rope. "Get in." Mara climbed aboard. He pushed away from the shore. The current carried them into a tunnel beneath the mountain. For several minutes neither spoke. Then Mara noticed blood dripping from Lucian's sleeve. "You're hurt." "It's nothing." "You're bleeding through your shirt." "I've had worse." She reached for his arm. He pulled away. "Don't." "Why?" "Because I won't be responsible for what happens if you touch me right now." Mara stared at him. "What does that mean?" Lucian looked into the dark water. "It means the bond is beginning." "What bond?" He closed his eyes. "The one your family spent generations trying to prevent." The boat drifted onward. Mara suddenly felt warmth spreading beneath her skin, matching the rhythm of his heartbeat. She could hear his pulse despite the rushing river. Lucian looked at her with unmistakable alarm. "No," he whispered. "It can't be this soon." Mara's wolf stirred violently. A second voice appeared inside her mind, not her own. "Mine." She recoiled. Lucian gripped the edge of the boat. "Mara." "What?" "Tell me you didn't hear that." She said nothing. His eyes hardened with realization. "You did." The river carried them deeper beneath the mountain, toward a place neither of them had planned to find, while above them the Ashbourne estate burned beneath a winter sky, and Adrian Ashbourne stood alone in the ruined courtyard staring at the message carved into the stone, realizing for the first time that the woman he loved had never truly been his to claim. The underground river carried Mara and Lucian through the mountain for nearly an hour before the current finally slowed, and during that time neither of them spoke about the to say. Mara nodded. "It is." She walked away before the crowd could respond. Lucian caught up with her. "You know they'll remember that speech." "I hope so." "You sounded like a politician." Mara groaned. "Don't insult me." They continued east. On the 13th night, they found the woman. She stood alone beside a ruined watchtower, dressed in a dark cloak. Her face was hidden. Mara approached. "You wanted me here." "Yes." "Then show your face." The woman lowered her hood. Mara stopped. She looked exactly like her. Not the first queen. Not one of the 7 previous versions. Mara herself. Older. Much older. Her hair was white. Her face was lined. A scar crossed one eye. Lucian whispered, "What the hell?" The older Mara smiled. "Hello." Mara stared. "You're another version." "Not another version." The woman stepped closer. "Your future." Mara felt the world tilt. "That's impossible." "You learned better than that." Mara's hand moved toward her weapon. "If you're me, why are you here?" The older Mara looked exhausted. "Because you made the wrong choice." Lucian stepped between them. "Which choice?" The older Mara answered, "You gave memory to everyone." "Yes." "You believed that would create freedom." "It did." For a while. Mara watched her carefully. What happened? The older woman looked toward the eastern mountains. People discovered that memories could be edited. Kale's face went pale. Edited? Not the old cities. Something new. The older Mara continued. When memory became universal, people learned to manipulate their own memories. They removed guilt. They removed grief. They removed responsibility. Eventually they began rewriting themselves. Mara shook her head. That can't happen. It already has. The older woman touched her chest. I came from a world where nobody remembered their mistakes. And what happened? They repeated them perfectly. Mara looked at Lucian. He had gone very still. Where are you from? The older Mara pointed east. The future. How did you get here? The same way the cities worked. Mara stared at her. Through memory. The older woman nodded. I remembered this moment so strongly that I returned to it. Celine whispered, that's impossible. The older Mara looked at her. You said that before. Mara felt a cold sensation travel through her body. What do you want? The older woman answered, I want you to kill me. Lucian immediately stepped forward. No. The older Mara laughed. You always say that. Mara stared at her. Why would I kill you? Because if I return to the future, I will become the person who destroys it. Then stay here. I can't. Why? The older Mara looked at John, who had accompanied them. His eyes were silver again. Because he is the first carrier. John stepped back. What does that mean? The memory network needs a central consciousness. Mara understood. You. The older Mara nodded. In my timeline, it chose me. And you became the ruler. No. Her voice broke. I became the prison. Mara stared at her older self. What happens if I don't kill you? The network follows me back. And if I do? The future changes. Maybe. The older Mara smiled sadly. That's the problem. You never know which choice creates the monster. The wind moved through the ruined tower. Nobody spoke. Finally, Mara lowered her weapon. I'm not killing you. The older Mara looked surprised. Why? Because I refuse to become the person you remember. The older woman closed her eyes. Then you're already different. Mara stepped closer. Help me stop the network. I can't. Why? Because the network isn't the enemy. Mara frowned. Then what is? The older Mara looked at John. The person controlling it. John suddenly screamed. Silver light erupted from his body. The ground cracked beneath him. A voice spoke through his mouth. It was neither male nor female. It sounded ancient and young at once. Enough. Everyone froze. The older Mara whispered, it found us. Mara drew her weapon. Who? The voice answered, the first mistake. The eastern sky turned black. Thousands of silver lines appeared above the mountains, connecting the stars. Mara realized they were not stars at all. They were memories. And something enormous was pulling them together. The older Mara looked at her younger self. Now you understand why I came. Mara stared at the sky. What is it building? The older Mara whispered, a body. Then the mountains began to move. Voice she had heard inside her mind. The silence was not peaceful. It was crowded with questions neither dared ask. Mara sat near the bow with her hands clasped tightly in her lap, watching faint blue reflections ripple across the cavern walls, while Lucian remained at the stern, one hand gripping the oar and the other pressed against his injured side. Every few minutes his breathing changed, becoming shallow whenever pain seized him, but whenever Mara glanced back he pretended not to notice. Eventually the river widened into an enormous underground chamber. Stone pillars rose from the black water, their surfaces covered with carvings of wolves, moons, crowns, and warriors kneeling before a woman whose face had been deliberately scratched away. At the center of the chamber stood a ruined temple. Lucian guided the boat toward a broken staircase. We're stopping, he said. Mara climbed out first. Where are we? The first sanctuary of the Moonfang. She looked at the ancient carvings again. You knew this place existed. I knew the legends. But you've been here. Once. When? Lucian tied the boat to an iron ring. The night your mother died. Mara turned sharply. You brought her here? I tried. He walked toward the temple. She was already wounded when I found her. She told me to take you and run. I carried you into the mountains, but the men pursuing us found the trail. And then? Your mother stayed behind. Mara's throat tightened. She sacrificed herself. She bought us 12 minutes. He stopped beside a collapsed pillar. 12 minutes was enough. Mara stared at him. She had spent half her life believing her mother had been unlucky, another victim of violence in a world where wolves fought over borders and power. Now she discovered that her mother's death had been deliberate, and the man standing before her had carried the secret alone for years. Why didn't you tell me when we first met? Because you were safer believing the lie. You decided that for me. Yes. You had no right. I know. She stepped closer. Then why help me now? Lucian looked directly into her eyes. Because the people hunting you no longer care whether you know the truth. Before Mara could answer, a low growl rolled through the temple. Lucian immediately drew his blade. Mara heard claws scraping against stone. A pair of amber eyes appeared between two pillars. Then another. 3 wolves emerged from the darkness, enormous and lean, their fur mottled with grey. Lucian moved in front of Mara. Stay behind me. You said I shouldn't shift. That was before. One wolf lunged. Lucian met it halfway. The collision sent both of them crashing against a pillar. Mara screamed as another wolf charged from the side. Instinct took over. Her body changed before she could stop it. Bones shifted, muscles tightened, and a white wolf burst into the chamber. She hit the attacking wolf with enough force to send it sliding across the stone floor. Lucian looked at her for half a second, surprise flashing across his face before his own transformation overtook him. His wolf was massive, black as midnight except for the silver fur around its neck. The two moved together without speaking. Mara drove one attacker toward the water while Lucian intercepted another. The third circled them, waiting. Then it lowered its head. Mara froze. The creature was not a rogue. It wore a silver collar bearing the crest of the Ashbourne family. Lucian, Mara growled through their shared wolf senses. I know. The wolf shifted back into human form. He was a young man, perhaps 25, with blood on his mouth and fear in his eyes. I didn't come to kill her. Lucian kept his blade raised. Who sent you? The man looked at Mara. Your fiancé. Mara shifted back, breathless. Adrian. He told us to find you before Lucian did. Lucian's face became expressionless. Why? He said you were in danger. That's not what he told the others. The young wolf lowered his gaze. He said if Lucian claimed you, the northern packs would go to war. Mara's heart sank. Claimed me? The messenger hesitated. He said the bond would awaken if you stayed together. Lucian's jaw tightened. How many were sent? 20. How many are left? The man said nothing. Mara understood. Only you. He nodded. Lucian lowered his weapon but did not sheath it. Go back. The young wolf looked surprised. Tell Adrian what you saw. He'll kill me. Then don't give him the chance. Leave the territory tonight. The man shifted and disappeared into the tunnel. Mara watched him go. You let him live. He wasn't our enemy. He followed orders. So have I. Mara looked at him. Whose? Lucian's eyes dropped. My father's. They entered the temple. At the center was a circular altar beneath a shattered dome, and beneath layers of dust Mara saw the same crescent symbol that had appeared on her hand when she touched the sanctuary stone. She knelt and brushed away the dirt. Words emerged beneath her fingers. The moon does not choose the strongest. It chooses the one who can refuse power. What does that mean? She asked. Lucian read the inscription. It means the Moonfang crown was never inherited by birth alone. Mara frowned. Then how was it chosen? By trial. A woman's voice answered from behind them. Mara spun around. An elderly woman stood beneath the broken doorway, leaning on a wooden staff. She wore a white cloak and had eyes so pale they looked almost colorless. Lucian immediately bowed his head. Elder Sarah. The woman ignored him and approached Mara. Your mother told me you would return. Mara's mouth went dry. She knew I would come here. She knew you would have no choice. Who are you? The last keeper of the Moonfang Sanctuary. Sarah touched Mara's cheek with 2 fingers. And you have your mother's eyes. Mara fought back tears. You knew her. I loved her. The old woman turned toward Lucian. And I warned you not to become attached to the child. Lucian's expression hardened. She isn't a child. No. That is why the danger is worse. Mara looked between them. What danger? Sarah sighed. The bond. The word seemed to echo through the temple. The ancient law says that when the last Moonfang heir awakens, the first alpha of the bloodline capable of matching her power will become her mate. Mara's face flushed with anger. I already have a fiancé. The moon does not recognize contracts. It doesn't get to decide my life. Sarah smiled sadly. That is precisely why you may be the first true Moonfang in 3 centuries. Mara stepped back. I don't understand. Your ancestors were not rulers because they demanded obedience. They ruled because they refused to take it. Every Moonfang heir was offered absolute power and everyone was required to surrender it willingly before receiving the crown. Lucian interrupted. Why did you bring us here? Sarah looked at him. Because the council has discovered the prophecy. Lucian's expression changed. How? Someone told them. Mara felt cold. Who? Sarah's gaze moved to her. Your fiancé. The word struck harder than any blow. Mara shook her head. Adrian wouldn't do that. He already has. Why? Sarah's voice became quieter. Because Adrian believes the only way to prevent the Moonfang from destroying the existing order is to control the heir before she learns what she can become. Lucian looked away. Mara noticed. You believe her. I believe the evidence. Then why didn't you warn me? Lucian's answer was immediate. Because I hoped Adrian would choose you over the throne. And now I think he has chosen the throne. Before Mara could respond, the temple doors exploded inward. Arrows struck the stone walls. Sarah fell to the floor. Lucian shoved Mara behind the altar. They're here. Hundreds of footsteps echoed through the tunnels. Mara heard familiar voices among them. Adrian's voice. Lucian. Step away from her. Lucian's hand tightened around his blade. Mara stared toward the entrance. Adrian appeared in the doorway wearing ceremonial armor, surrounded by armed warriors. His face was not angry. It was devastated. Mara. He said. Come with me. She stood slowly. Did you send the wolves? Adrian's silence answered for him. I sent them to protect you. 20 wolves. I didn't know they'd attack. You knew enough to send them. Adrian's expression hardened. You don't understand what you've awakened. Then explain it. He looked at Lucian. He will turn you against everyone. Lucian laughed once, without humor. Still using that story? Adrian's eyes flashed. You abandoned this family. I left because father ordered me to execute innocent villagers. You left because you couldn't accept what leadership required. And you accepted it too easily. Adrian stepped forward. Enough. His gaze returned to Mara. You are coming home. Mara looked at him for a long moment. This isn't my home anymore. Something broke in Adrian's expression. Mara. She shook her head. You lied to me. Because I love you. You lied because you were afraid. He clenched his fists. You have no idea what happens if you become Moonfang. Then tell me. Adrian's voice dropped. The old blood can command every wolf in the Northern Territories. The warriors behind him shifted uneasily. If you claim that power, no alpha will be able to oppose you. Mara looked at Sarah. Is that true? The elder nodded. If the heir chooses domination. And if I don't? Then the power remains dormant. Adrian stepped closer. You think you can simply refuse it? Yes. You can't. Watch me. The chamber fell silent. Then Mara felt the bond inside her flare again. Lucian's heartbeat synchronized with hers. Adrian noticed. His face went pale. No. Mara looked at Lucian. He seemed equally alarmed. The ancient altar began to glow. Every warrior dropped to one knee without understanding why. Sarah whispered, "The trial has begun." The temple shook. A crack opened beneath Mara's feet, revealing a staircase descending farther underground. From the darkness came a sound like thousands of wolves breathing together. Mara stepped toward it. Lucian caught her arm. "Don't go down there." "Why?" "Because whatever is beneath this temple has been waiting for your blood." "Then I need to know why." "Mara," she pulled free. "You told me I shouldn't trust you." "I didn't." "You told me I shouldn't run." "I didn't." "Now I'm choosing this myself." Lucian stared at her, then slowly lowered his hand. "Then I go with you." Adrian stepped forward. "No." Mara turned toward him. "You don't get to decide that anymore." Together she and Lucian descended into the darkness while Adrian remained above, surrounded by warriors who no longer knew whether they were protecting their future alpha or witnessing the beginning of the end of his reign. The staircase seemed to have no end. Mara counted 127 steps before she stopped trying, because the stone beneath her feet had changed from rough grey rock to polished black glass, and the walls were no longer carved with the symbols of the moonfang but with scenes that made her stomach tighten. In one, a woman stood before thousands of kneeling wolves with a crown above her head. In another, the same woman had removed the crown and placed it on the ground. In the final carving, she walked away from an army while the wolves behind her lowered their weapons. Lucian followed close enough that Mara could feel the warmth of his body, but he did not touch her. "Do you recognize her?" he asked. Mara shook her head. "No. That's your ancestor." She looked again. The face had been worn away, but the posture, the long hair, the crescent mark on the wrist, it was unmistakably the same figure Sarah had described. Why would she surrender the crown? Maybe she discovered what power costs. Mara glanced over her shoulder. "You sound like you've thought about this." "I've had 3 years to think about almost everything." "And what did you decide?" Lucian's mouth curved slightly. "That power makes cowards brave until the consequences arrive." They continued downward. At the bottom they found a vast cavern illuminated by pale light rising from an underground lake. At its center stood a single stone bridge leading to a circular island. On that island rested a black throne. Mara stopped. "That's the crown?" "No." Lucian looked uneasy. "That's the test." The moment she stepped onto the bridge, the cavern changed. The lake vanished. The stone walls disappeared. Mara found herself standing in the ballroom of the Ashbourne estate, wearing the wedding dress she had chosen months earlier. Music played. Guests smiled. Adrian stood at the altar. Everything looked perfect. Too perfect. "Mara." Adrian held out his hand. "Come here." She looked down at herself. There was no blood on her dress, no mark on her wrist. The bond with Lucian had disappeared. For a heartbeat she wanted to accept the illusion. She wanted her old life back. A simple wedding. A peaceful marriage. No prophecy. No enemies. No ancient throne. She walked toward Adrian. He smiled. "See? This is what you wanted." "Yes." "Then stop fighting." Mara stopped 3 steps away. "Why are you asking me to stop fighting?" Adrian's smile faltered. "Because none of this matters." She looked around. Everyone in the ballroom had identical expressions. The musicians played without blinking. Her mother stood among the guests, even though she had been dead for years. Mara's breath caught. Her mother smiled. "Come home, sweetheart." Tears filled Mara's eyes. "You're not real." Her mother's expression changed. "You don't know that. My mother would never tell me to surrender my choices." The illusion cracked. The ballroom shattered like glass. Mara found herself back on the bridge. Lucian was several steps behind her, staring at something only he could see. "Lucian?" He didn't respond. Mara approached and saw a battlefield surrounding him. Hundreds of bodies lay beneath a red sky. A younger Lucian stood in the middle holding a sword. His hands were covered in blood. Across from him stood an old man wearing the Ashbourne crest. "Kill them," the old man ordered. "They're rebels." Lucian's younger self lowered the sword. "They're children. They're enemies. They're farmers. Kill them." Lucian looked at Mara but did not seem to see her. She realized he was trapped inside his own memory. The younger Lucian raised the sword. Mara grabbed his wrist. The battlefield froze. "You don't have to do it." Lucian looked at her. "You can't change this. Maybe not what happened. But I can change what you do with it." He stared at her for a long moment, then released the sword. It fell into the dirt. The battlefield vanished. Lucian returned to the bridge, breathing hard. "What did you see?" Mara asked. "My worst failure." "Did you kill them?" "No." He looked at his hands. "But I left them alive under orders to retreat. The council returned later and executed them." Mara understood why he carried the guilt. "You didn't make that decision. I obeyed the order. And now you don't have to." He looked at her. "Neither do you." The island waited ahead. They crossed the final section of the bridge. The black throne began to glow. A voice filled the cavern, neither male nor female. "Mara Vale. Daughter of Ilara. Last of the Moonfang." Mara stepped forward. "What do you want?" "Nothing." "Then why bring me here?" "To ask what you want." The answer unsettled her more than any threat could have. The voice continued. "You have been promised to one man. You have been claimed by another. Both are wrong." Mara glanced at Lucian. "Then what is the bond?" "A door." "To what?" "Choice." The throne split open. Inside was a silver crown, simple and ancient. The voice spoke again. "Take the crown, and every wolf north of the mountains will hear your command. Destroy the crown, and the Moonfang line ends with you. Leave it untouched, and another will take it." Mara stared at the crown. "Who?" "The strongest wolf who reaches this chamber." She immediately thought of Adrian. He would take it. Perhaps. Lucian stepped forward. "There has to be another option." The voice answered. "There always was." Mara looked at him. "What is it?" "Give the crown to someone who cannot use it." Lucian understood first. His eyes widened. "No." Mara looked at the crown. Then at him. "Why not?" "Because the moment I accept it, I become the most dangerous wolf alive. You said the crown chooses someone capable of refusing power. And you think I can?" "I think you already have." Lucian shook his head. "Mara, don't." She picked up the crown. It was unexpectedly light. She turned toward him. "You walked away from the Ashbourne throne. You refused your father's orders. You protected people who couldn't protect themselves. You came back when you could have disappeared forever." She held out the crown. "If this is about refusing power, you're the only person I trust." Lucian did not take it. "You don't understand what you're asking." "I understand exactly. The bond between us will become permanent. Then I choose it." He stared at her. "You don't have to choose me." Mara smiled faintly. "That's why I am." Before he could answer, a violent explosion shook the cavern. The bridge cracked. Adrian appeared at the far entrance with blood running down one side of his face. Behind him stood half a dozen warriors. "Step away from the crown," he shouted. Mara turned. "You followed us." "Of course I did." His eyes were fixed on the silver crown. "You don't know what you're holding." Lucian moved between them. "Neither do you." Adrian's gaze sharpened. "Give it to me." Mara closed her fingers around it. "No." Adrian's wolf surged through him. His eyes changed. "Then I'll take it." He charged. Lucian met him head-on. The two brothers collided with such force that the stone beneath them fractured. Mara backed away as they fought. Adrian was faster than she expected, but Lucian fought with controlled precision. They had trained together as children, and every movement carried memories of old sparring matches transformed into something lethal. Adrian drove Lucian against a pillar. "You always thought you were better than me," he shouted. Lucian struck him across the jaw. "No. I thought you were better than this." Adrian roared and shifted completely. His wolf was enormous, golden brown, with a scar across its muzzle. Lucian transformed as well. The battle became brutal. Mara watched them circle each other until Adrian lunged. Lucian caught him at the shoulder, but Adrian twisted and threw him into the lake. The impact sent water exploding into the air. Mara screamed. Lucian. Adrian turned toward her. Give me the crown. No. You think he can save you? I don't need saving. Adrian's face changed. Then why does he keep standing between you and me? Mara lifted the crown. Because he respects my choices. Adrian lunged. Mara raised the crown instinctively. A wave of silver light exploded through the cavern. Every wolf froze. Adrian collapsed to his knees. Lucian emerged from the lake, breathing heavily. The voice returned. The heir has chosen. Mara looked down at the crown in her hands. It began to dissolve into silver dust. The dust traveled toward Lucian. He tried to resist, but it entered his skin. He screamed. Mara rushed toward him, but the ground erupted between them. A shockwave threw her backward. When the light faded, Lucian stood in the center of the cavern with silver markings spreading across his arms and neck. His eyes were no longer gray. They shone like moonlight. Adrian stared at him in horror. The crown didn't choose him. Mara whispered, it chose both of us. The voice answered, the Moonfang heir cannot rule alone. She must be bound to the one who can oppose her. Mara looked at Lucian. The bond between them became overwhelming. She could feel his fear, his anger, his exhaustion, even the memories he had spent years burying. He could feel hers. There was no hiding now. Lucian walked toward her. Mara. I'm here. He stopped inches away. If we accept this, every pack will know. Then let them know. They'll come for you. They already have. They'll come for me. Then we'll face them. He closed his eyes. You make this sound easy. It isn't. Mara took his hand. But it is ours. The cavern began to collapse. Adrian looked up as stones rained from the ceiling. We have to leave. Lucian grabbed Mara's hand. They ran toward the bridge as the underground sanctuary broke apart behind them. Adrian followed, but halfway across the bridge, the stone gave way beneath him. He caught the edge with both hands. Mara stopped. Lucian shouted, "Don't." Adrian looked up at her. For the first time since the wedding arrangement had been announced, he looked less like an alpha and more like the boy she had once known. "Mara," he whispered. "Please." She lowered herself toward him. Lucian grabbed her waist. "It's a trap." Adrian's eyes flicked toward Lucian. "I don't want the crown anymore." Mara froze. "What?" Adrian swallowed. "I thought if I controlled you, I could save everyone. I was wrong." The cavern shook violently. Adrian's grip slipped. Mara reached out. Their fingers touched. Then the bridge collapsed. Adrian fell into darkness. Mara screamed his name, but there was no answer. Lucian pulled her away as the entire sanctuary caved in. They emerged through the river tunnel moments before the mountain entrance exploded behind them, burying the ancient chamber beneath tons of stone. Snow poured into the opening. Mara stood outside, covered in dust and blood, staring at the mountain. "He's dead." Lucian didn't answer. "Lucian. We don't know that." She looked at him. "You think he survived?" Adrian has survived things that should have killed him. He turned toward the horizon. Hundreds of distant howls answered from the valleys below. Mara felt the new power awakening across the northern territories. Wolves were sensing her. They were sensing him. And somewhere beyond the mountains, an army was already moving toward them. Lucian looked at her. "The council knows." Mara drew a slow breath. "Then we stop running." For the first time, Lucian smiled without sadness. "That's the woman I remember carrying out of the fire." Mara looked at him sharply. "You remember me. I never forgot you." She took his hand. Together they began walking toward the burning lights of the Ashbourne estate, unaware that the greatest danger was not waiting in the mountains or within the council chamber, but already standing among the people who would soon kneel before their newly awakened queen and alpha. By the time Mara and Lucian reached the lower road, Dawn had begun to stain the eastern horizon with a thin grey light, but there was nothing peaceful about the morning. The Ashbourne estate burned behind them, its highest towers black against the snow, while columns of smoke twisted into the pale sky. Wolves watched from the surrounding forest, dozens of them, perhaps hundreds, their eyes reflecting the strange silver glow that now surrounded Mara and Lucian. None approached. None attacked. They simply waited. Mara could feel their confusion through the new power inside her. Some were frightened. Some were curious. Others were angry. The sensation was so overwhelming that she stopped walking and pressed her fingers against her temples. "They're all speaking at once," she whispered. Lucian immediately moved beside her. "Don't listen to every voice." "How?" "Choose one." "Which one?" "Yours." She closed her eyes. At first the voices were unbearable, a storm of thoughts, memories, instincts, hunger, fear, and loyalty. Then she remembered what the ancient voice had said. The Moonfang did not rule by force. She opened her eyes and spoke aloud. "I hear you. But I will not command you." The forest fell. Silent. Every wolf lowered its head. Lucian watched her with astonishment. That shouldn't have worked. Mara exhaled slowly. Maybe they wanted someone to say it. A wolf stepped out of the trees. It was an old female with a torn ear and white fur around her muzzle. She shifted into an elderly woman wearing a ragged cloak. "They have been waiting for that answer for 70 years, she said. Mara looked at her. "Who are you?" "The representative of the Western Packs." The woman glanced toward the burning estate. "And I have come to tell you that the council has declared you an enemy." Lucian's expression hardened. "How many packs have joined them?" 6. "How many remain neutral?" 4. "And the rest?" The woman looked directly at Mara. "Waiting to see whether you become a tyrant." Mara felt the weight of that judgment immediately. She had spent her entire life being told what she would become. Bride. Lady. Queen. Now everyone wanted to know whether she would become a ruler. She looked at the woman. "I don't want a throne." The woman smiled sadly. "Then you may be exactly the ruler they fear." Before Mara could answer, a horn sounded from the valley. Lucian turned toward the ridge. "They're here." Figures appeared along the distant road. Hundreds of wolves moved through the snow, carrying banners marked with the black crescent of the Northern Council. At their center rode a tall man in silver armor. Mara recognized him immediately. Lord Cassian Vaya, the council's first regent. She had met him twice during formal ceremonies and remembered him as a courteous old statesman with a soft voice and careful manners. Now he raised one hand, and the army stopped. His voice traveled across the frozen valley through amplified wolf magic. "Mara Vale, heir of Moonfang, surrender yourself and the council will spare the Ashbourne territory." Mara stared at the burning estate. "Spare it?" Cassian laughed quietly. "You misunderstand. We are not responsible for the fire." Lucian's head snapped toward him. "Who started it?" "Your father." Mara looked at Lucian. "Your father?" Lucian's face tightened. "He was dying." Cassian continued. "The old Alpha knew what was coming. He chose to destroy the estate's records rather than allow them to fall into your hands." Mara's heart sank. "Records?" Cassian smiled. "Your mother left something behind." Lucian stepped forward. "What?" "A treaty." Cassian's expression became almost triumphant. "A treaty proving that the Moonfang bloodline voluntarily surrendered its authority to the Ashbourne family 200 years ago." Mara frowned. "Then why are you afraid of me?" Cassian's smile disappeared. "Because the treaty contains one condition." "What condition?" "The Ashbourne line may govern the Northern Territories only while the Moonfang heir remains absent. The moment the heir returns, the agreement expires." Silence spread across the valley. Mara finally understood. The council wasn't defending the old order. It was defending a stolen one. Cassian raised his sword. "You are not merely a threat to the council. You are a legal challenge to every alpha standing behind me." One of the wolves beside him shifted uneasily. Another lowered his weapon. Lucian noticed. "They're listening." "Of course they are," Mara replied. Let them. She stepped forward. Cassian Vaya, I will not fight you for a crown. The regent laughed. Then what do you want? The truth. Truth is a luxury. No. It's the thing you're most afraid of. Mara raised her hand. Silver light spread across the valley. Not an attack. A pulse. Every wolf felt it. And with it came fragments of memory. Not fabricated visions, but memories buried within the old bloodline itself. The council warriors suddenly saw their ancestors kneeling before Moonfang rulers. They saw the original treaty. They saw the Ashbourne patriarch accepting stewardship rather than ownership. Then they saw the moment the council had secretly altered the records decades later. Gasps spread through the army. Cassian staggered backward. Stop. Mara lowered her hand. There. Memories vanished. I didn't show them anything you didn't already know. Cassian's face twisted with fury. Kill her. The army charged. Lucian shifted before the first warrior reached them. His black wolf exploded forward, striking the leading soldier and sending him rolling through the snow. Mara felt every movement of the wolves around her, but she refused to command them. Instead, she called out, if you believe in the council, fight. If you don't, step aside. Half the army stopped. The other half continued. The battle became chaos. Wolves collided across the valley, snow turning grey beneath their paws. Mara moved through the fighting without drawing a weapon. When one warrior attacked her, she caught his wrist and redirected him into the snow. Another came from behind. The old Western representative intercepted him. She's not your enemy, she shouted. A blade flashed. Mara ducked. The attacker was young, barely old enough to have earned his first rank. He froze when he saw her face. You're really Moonfang. Apparently. He lowered his sword. My father said your bloodline murdered entire packs. Mara stared at him. Ask him why he never showed you the graves. The young warrior looked shaken. Then he turned and walked away from the battle. That small decision spread. Others followed. The council formation began to fracture. Cassian screamed orders, but fewer wolves obeyed him with every passing minute. Lucian returned to Mara, blood staining his shoulder. You're hurt. Not mine. She touched his arm. The silver markings beneath his skin brightened. His wound closed. Lucian stared at her. You can heal now. I didn't know. Neither did I. Then a massive roar shook the valley. Everyone stopped. From the smoke behind the army emerged a golden wolf with a torn ear and a scar across its muzzle. Mara recognized it instantly. Adrian. Lucian moved in front of her. The golden wolf shifted. Adrian stood there, soaked in blood and covered with dust, but alive. Mara's breath caught. You survived. Adrian laughed weakly. I fell into an underground river. He looked at Lucian. Apparently the universe still isn't done punishing me. Lucian lowered his stance. Why are you here? Adrian looked toward Cassian. Because he lied to me. Cassian's expression became furious. You traitorous boy. Adrian turned toward him. You told me Mara would destroy the packs. You told me controlling her was the only way to prevent a war. You never told me the council had already decided to kill her. Mara stepped closer. How did you find out? Adrian looked at the burning estate. Father left me a letter. He pulled a folded paper from his coat. He knew the council would come. He knew I had been manipulated. Lucian stared at the letter. What did he say? Adrian swallowed. He said I was never supposed to marry Mara. Mara looked confused. Then why arrange it? Because he wanted to protect you. Adrian looked at her. The marriage contract wasn't meant to give you to the Ashbournes. It was meant to hide your identity from the council. Mara stared at him. Then why did you know? I didn't. Not until yesterday. Lucian stepped forward. Who knew? Adrian's eyes moved to him. Our father. Your mother. Sarah. And one other person. Mara already knew the answer before he said it. Your mother. Adrian nodded. My mother knew everything. Mara's stomach tightened. The woman who had welcomed her into the estate kissed her forehead, and called her daughter had known that Mara's mother had been murdered. She had known the truth about the Moonfang line. She had allowed Mara to enter the house while the council closed its trap. "Where is she?" Mara asked. Adrian's expression became grim. "Gone." Cassian suddenly turned his horse. "You have all been deceived," he shouted to the remaining warriors. "The Moonfang has corrupted the Ashbourne heirs. Kill them all." The final loyalists charged. But this time Mara did not stand alone. Wolves from the western, eastern, and southern territories moved into formation beside her. Lucian stood on her right. Adrian stood on her left. For the first time, the three of them faced the same enemy. Mara looked at Adrian. "You know this changes everything." "I know. I can't marry you." Adrian gave a tired smile. "I know. And I don't know if I can forgive you. I don't expect you to." He glanced at Lucian. "But I hope someday you'll forgive yourself for believing you had to choose between us." Mara looked away. The battle resumed, but the balance had changed. Cassian's forces collapsed under the combined strength of the neutral packs. By noon, the council army had retreated toward the southern fortress. Cassian escaped. The valley fell strangely quiet. Mara stood amid the wreckage, staring at the snow beneath her boots. Lucian approached. "You all right?" "No." He nodded. "Good answer." She looked at him. "You don't seem surprised." "I've spent years learning that pretending to be fine usually makes things worse." Adrian approached from behind. "We need to leave." Lucian turned. "Where?" Adrian unfolded the letter. "Father wrote that the council has a second fortress beneath the old capital." Mara frowned. "Why does that matter?" Adrian pointed to a final line. "Because that's where they keep the original Moonfang records." Mara read the sentence twice. "If those records exist, we can prove everything." "More than that," Adrian said. "The letter says your mother hid something there." Mara looked toward the mountains. "What?" Adrian shook his head. "Father didn't know." Lucian's eyes narrowed. "Then we're going to the capital." Mara looked at the smoking estate one last time. Her old life had burned there. The woman who had arrived believing she was coming to marry Adrian was gone. She was no longer simply Mara Vale, promised bride of an alpha. She was the last Moonfang, bound by an ancient power she still barely understood, standing beside a man whose heart she could now feel as clearly as her own. But as they began the journey south, none of them noticed the figure watching from the distant ridge. A woman in a dark cloak stood beside a dead pine, holding a silver pendant marked with the Moonfang crescent. She watched Mara disappear into the valley and whispered, "She survived." A second voice answered from behind her. "Of course she did." The woman turned. The voice belonged to someone Mara believed was dead. "Now," he said, "we can finally begin the second part of her mother's plan." The road to the old capital took 3 days, and during those 3 days Mara discovered that becoming the most powerful wolf in the Northern Territories did not make ordinary problems disappear. It made them louder. Wolves argued about who should guard her, where she should sleep, whether Lucian had the right to remain beside her, and whether Adrian should be imprisoned for his role in the attack at the sanctuary. Mara refused every attempt to decide her life for her. On the first night, when 3 senior alphas insisted that she needed a permanent escort, she walked outside the camp and sat alone beside the river until they understood that she was not asking permission to breathe. On the second morning, when one of the Eastern commanders challenged Lucian's authority, Lucian handed the man his sword and told him to choose the battlefield. The commander backed down. Adrian spent most of the journey riding several lengths behind them, deliberately keeping his distance. He rarely spoke unless necessary, but Mara noticed that he had stopped wearing the ceremonial silver of an Ashbourne heir. He had removed the family crest from his cloak and replaced it with a plain leather clasp. It was a small change, yet it told her more than an apology could have. On the third evening they reached the ruins of the old capital. Once, the city had been the heart of the Northern Territories. Now only broken towers remained, their stones buried beneath centuries of snow. The modern council had built its fortress elsewhere, but the original palace still stood beneath the earth. Sarah had joined them that morning, arriving without explanation and carrying a weathered satchel. Mara looked at her suspiciously. You knew we were coming here. I knew you would need me. That's not the same thing. Sarah smiled. You're learning. Lucian studied the ruins. The entrance. Sarah pointed toward a collapsed cathedral. Underneath. They entered through a cracked stairwell and descended into a chamber where ancient statues stood with their faces turned toward the floor. Mara felt the bond respond the moment she crossed the threshold. The air tasted metallic. Her skin prickled. Something is wrong. Lucian stopped. I feel it. Adrian looked around. There are no guards. That's what worries me, Lucian said. They moved deeper into the underground palace. The architecture changed as they descended. Modern stone gave way to ancient black rock, and the walls were covered in names. Thousands of names. Kings. Queens. Alphas. Warriors. Healers. Children. Mara ran her fingers across them. Why are there so many? Sarah answered quietly. The Moonfang kept records of everyone who died under its protection. Mara stopped. Everyone? They believed a ruler should remember the names of those who paid for the ruler's decisions. Lucian looked at the walls. That's why the council hated them. Sarah nodded. The council preferred numbers. They reached a massive circular door. At its center was a handprint. Mara placed her palm against it. Nothing happened. Lucian tried. Nothing. Adrian stepped forward. The door opened immediately. Mara stared at him. Why did it recognize you? Adrian looked equally confused. I don't know. Sarah's expression changed. Because the Ashbourne line was never merely the steward of Moonfang. What does that mean? Your families were bound long before the treaty. The door opened fully. Inside was a chamber containing 3 stone pedestals. On the first rested an ancient sword. On the second was a silver pendant. On the third lay a sealed wooden box. Mara approached the pendant. The instant she touched it, she saw her mother's face. Elara Vale stood inside a small room, speaking directly to someone beyond the vision. If Mara is watching this, then I failed to keep her hidden. Mara's breath caught. Mother. Elara continued. You must listen carefully. The Moonfang power was never intended to belong to one person. Your ancestor divided it into 3 parts: blood, bond, and memory. The blood awakens the heir. The bond chooses the guardian. The memory preserves the truth. Mara looked toward Lucian. Blood, bond, memory. Sarah nodded. The 3 foundations. Ilara's image continued. The council will tell you the crown gives command over every wolf. That is only half the truth. The crown can also be used to erase memory. The first Moonfang queen discovered this too late. She created a safeguard. 3 bloodlines would carry fragments of her power, ensuring no ruler could become absolute. Mara looked at Adrian. 3 bloodlines. Ilara nodded in the recording. Moonfang carries blood. Ashbourne carries memory. The third line carries bond. Lucian's expression changed. What third line? The vision flickered. Ilara's face became strained. I never learned whether they survived. The recording ended. Silence filled the chamber. Mara turned slowly. Then Lucian isn't the guardian because of the bond. Sarah looked at him. No. Who is? Sarah's gaze shifted to Adrian. The Ashbourne family carries memory, but your brother's awakening proved something else. Adrian frowned. What? You are the third line. Lucian stared at him. That's impossible. Sarah shook her head. Your mother's family came from the original Guardian clan. The council erased the name from the records. Adrian stepped backward. Then why can Mara heal Lucian? Sarah looked at Mara. Because she carries blood. Because Lucian carries the bond. And because Adrian carries memory. Mara felt the implications unfolding. Then the 3 of us were never brought together by coincidence. No one answered. A sudden sound echoed through the chamber. A lock turning. Then another. The wooden box opened by itself. Inside was a black journal. Adrian reached for it. The moment his fingers touched the cover, his eyes rolled back. Mara caught him before he fell. Images flooded through the room. She saw the original treaty. She saw the first Moonfang Queen standing beside an Ashbourne ancestor and a third warrior whose face had been hidden behind a silver mask. Then she saw a fourth figure. A man wearing the council crest. He drove a blade into the Queen's back. The vision changed. Centuries passed in seconds. Each generation of Moonfang heirs was hunted. Each guardian was separated from them. Each memory keeper was manipulated. Then Mara saw her mother. Ilara was standing in the same chamber, speaking to someone hidden in shadow. If you cannot protect Mara, I will take her to the Veil Pack. The shadowed figure answered, and if they find her, then I will make sure she has someone who can protect her. Mara recognized the voice. It was Adrian's mother. Mara stepped backward. She knew. Lucian looked at her. She helped your mother. Adrian regained consciousness, breathing hard. I saw it too. He opened his eyes. My mother wasn't working for the council. Mara stared at him. Then why did she let them believe she was? To keep you hidden. And the fire? Adrian shook his head. She started it. Lucian stiffened. What? She burned the estate because the council had infiltrated it. Mara's mind raced. Then where is she? Adrian looked at the journal. The last entry says she went to the southern fortress. Sarah whispered, she didn't go alone. Mara turned. Who went with her? Sarah hesitated. That hesitation was enough. Tell me. Your mother. The words seemed to stop time. Mara's knees weakened. My mother is dead. No. Sarah's eyes filled with sorrow. Ilara survived the attack. Mara stared at her. You knew. I knew she was alive. Where? Sarah shook her head. I don't know. Mara's hands trembled. You let me believe she was dead. Because she needed you to believe it. Why? Sarah finally answered. Because she was infiltrating the council. Mara could barely breathe. Every memory of her childhood rearranged itself. The grave. The funeral. The stories of bandits. The night she had cried herself to sleep believing she had been abandoned. All of it might have been a lie. Lucian stepped toward her. Mara. She backed away. Don't. You don't have to deal with this alone. Everyone keeps saying that while keeping secrets from me. Her voice broke. How many lies are left? Nobody answered. Then the journal began turning pages by itself. A final message appeared in fresh ink. The heir must not reach the southern fortress. Mara stared at the words. Why? A heartbeat later, the answer came from outside. A massive explosion tore through the cathedral above them. Dust poured from the ceiling. Warriors shouted. Sarah grabbed her staff. They're here. Lucian drew his sword. Who? The chamber doors slammed shut. A voice echoed through the underground palace. Your mother. Mara froze. The voice was unmistakable. It was a woman's voice, older than the one in the recording but unmistakably familiar. Ilara. Mara, if you can hear me, do not trust the person beside you. Mara stared at Lucian. He stared back, stunned. Then the voice continued. He is not the guardian. Lucian's face went pale. What? Ilara's voice echoed through the chamber. He is the one who killed me. The silence that followed was absolute. Mara slowly turned toward Lucian. His face had lost every trace of color. Adrian whispered, that's impossible. But Mara could feel the bond between herself and Lucian pulsing violently, and for the first time since the sanctuary, it did not feel like warmth. It felt like a warning. For several seconds Mara could hear nothing except the pounding of her own heart, although the underground chamber was filled with the echo of Ilara's accusation. Lucian stood. Completely still. Adrian stared at his brother as though he had never seen him before. Sarah's fingers tightened around her staff. Then the voice came again through the ancient stones, quieter this time. Mara, if you are hearing this, it means the sanctuary has awakened and Lucian has brought you here. That was the one outcome I feared most. Mara swallowed. Mother. Her voice cracked. If you're alive, answer me. There was no immediate reply. Instead, A series of symbols appeared on the wall, glowing faintly silver. A woman's silhouette formed within them. Ilara looked older than Mara remembered, her dark hair streaked with grey, a deep scar running along her jaw. She was alive. Mara's knees nearly gave way. Mother. The image did not react to her. It was a recording, preserved by magic, but the knowledge that Ilara had survived long enough to make it was almost unbearable. You must understand something, Ilara said. Lucian Ashbourne was the reason I disappeared. Lucian closed his eyes. Mara looked at him. Is it true? He did not answer. Lucian. His eyes opened. Part of it. Adrian stepped forward. What part? Lucian looked at his brother. I found Ilara after the assassination attempt. She was alive. The council had wounded her, but she escaped. I was ordered to bring her back. Mara's voice became cold. And did you? No. Then why does she say you killed her? Because I thought I did. The answer stunned all of them. Lucian continued, 3 years ago, before I disappeared, I was sent to eliminate a Moonfang sympathizer hiding in the Western Mountains. I found Ilara instead. She attacked me because she believed I was there to capture her. We fought. I disarmed her, but she fell from a cliff. Mara's eyes filled with tears. You watched her fall? Yes. You didn't search for her? I did. His voice became rough. For 6 days. And then? I found blood. No body. Mara stared at him. You let me believe she was dead. I didn't know she was alive. But you knew enough to tell me. I tried. When? The night you arrived at the estate. Mara remembered his first words. You should not have come. She suddenly understood the desperation in his voice. You weren't warning me about the wedding. No. He looked at her. I was warning you about the person who had been protecting you. Mara frowned. Who? Lucian's eyes moved toward Sarah. Your mother wasn't alone. Sarah lowered her head. She had help. Mara looked from one to the other. What aren't you telling me? Sarah sighed. Ilara believed the council had corrupted the Guardian bloodline. She spent years trying to identify the traitor. Eventually she discovered that the Guardian wasn't a family at all. Mara stared. Then what was it? A title. Adrian's expression changed. A title passed to whoever proved capable of carrying the bond. Lucian shook his head. That's not what the records say. Because the records were rewritten. Sarah walked to the stone wall and pressed her palm against it. A hidden compartment opened. Inside lay a small dagger wrapped in cloth. The Guardian isn't chosen by blood. The Guardian is chosen by the heir. Mara looked at Lucian. Then why did the bond choose you? Maybe it didn't. Lucian's answer was so quiet that Mara almost missed it. The silver markings along his arms suddenly began to burn. He staggered backward and gripped the edge of the stone table. Lucian. Mara rushed toward him. He raised a hand. Don't touch me. You're hurting. That's the point. He looked at the glowing marks. The bond isn't accepting me. Mara froze. What? It's fighting me. Adrian stepped closer. Why? Lucian's breathing became ragged. Because I was never meant to be your guardian. The chamber trembled. The ancient journal snapped shut. Then the doors exploded inward. Warriors flooded the corridor. But they were not council soldiers. They wore white masks and carried weapons etched with the same crescent symbol as the Moonfang. Sarah whispered, the silent. Order. Mara had never heard the name, but Lucian had. They were supposed to be extinct. The masked warriors surrounded them. Their leader stepped forward. She was a tall woman with silver hair and a scar across her throat. They were never extinct. She removed her mask. Mara stared at her. The woman's face was unfamiliar, but her eyes were the same pale grey as Ilara's. Who are you? Mara asked. The woman smiled. Your aunt. The world seemed to tilt. I don't have an aunt. You were told you didn't. The woman glanced toward Lucian. Just as you were told he was your guardian. Lucian stepped forward despite the pain. What do you want? The heir. Why? Because the Moonfang line cannot survive another betrayal. Mara's anger overcame her fear. Then start explaining. The woman looked at her for several seconds. Your mother was never trying to hide you from the council. She was hiding you from us. Mara's stomach tightened. Why? Because we wanted to use you. For what? To restore the old kingdom. Mara laughed bitterly. So everyone wants me to become their weapon. Not everyone. The woman pointed toward Lucian. He wants something else. Mara looked at him. What? Lucian's face was unreadable. I want you alive. Her aunt's smile faded. That is precisely why he is dangerous. She raised her hand. Every masked warrior aimed their weapons at Lucian. Mara stepped between them. Nobody touches him. Her aunt shook her head. You still don't understand. Then explain. Lucian is not an Ashbourne. Adrian's eyes widened. What? The woman looked at him. Your father adopted him. Mara turned toward Lucian. He looked down. Adrian's voice hardened. You knew. Lucian nodded. I discovered it when I was 19. Why didn't you tell me? Because father made me swear. Adrian stared at him. Why? Lucian finally looked up. Because my real father was the last guardian. The chamber went silent. Mara's bond pulsed violently. Her aunt whispered, and he killed him. Lucian's face became rigid. No. You did. I was a child. You were 17. I didn't know who he was. You obeyed the council. Lucian's hands shook. I thought he was a traitor. Mara looked at him. Was he? Lucian closed his eyes. No. The answer came with such pain that Mara felt it through the bond. His memories flooded into her mind without warning. She saw a teenage Lucian standing in a courtyard. A wounded man knelt before him. The man wore no armor. He had the same silver markings that Lucian carried now. A council officer handed Lucian a sword. Do it. The young Lucian hesitated. He's my enemy. The man looked at him and whispered, I'm your father. Lucian's memory shattered before the sword fell. Mara staggered backward. She had seen enough. You didn't know. Lucian looked at her. I know that doesn't make it better. No. Mara's voice trembled. It doesn't. Adrian stepped between them. If Lucian isn't the guardian, then what is he? Ilara's recorded voice answered from the wall. He is the weapon created to destroy the guardian. Everyone turned. The image of Ilara appeared again. The council took the child of the guardian and raised him within the Ashbourne family. They trained him to believe that obedience was honor. They gave him a new name. They made him strong enough to kill the one person who could oppose them. Mara looked at Lucian. He stood frozen. Why would the bond choose him? Ilara's image continued. Because the moon does not choose what is pure. It chooses what can change. Lucian whispered, your mother knew. Yes. Then why did she trust me? Because she believed you could become someone different. Mara felt tears burning her eyes. Her aunt stepped closer. And that is why he must die. Mara immediately moved between them. No. He is a danger. So am I. You are the heir. Exactly. Silver light began gathering around Mara's body. If you came here expecting me to obey you, you came to the wrong woman. Her aunt looked almost amused. Then prove it. The chamber doors slammed shut. The masked warriors attacked. Mara raised both hands, but instead of unleashing the full force of her power, she reached into the minds of the wolves and found the command structures controlling them. She broke them one by one. Weapons fell. Warriors stumbled. Lucian moved through the chaos with terrifying speed, disarming opponents rather than killing them. Adrian protected Sarah, fighting with a skill Mara had never seen from him. Her aunt remained still, watching. You are wasting your strength, she called. Mara turned toward her. I'm choosing not to kill. That is not mercy. No. Mara walked forward. It's restraint. Her aunt's expression changed. Then perhaps your mother was right. She lowered her weapon. Perhaps you are ready. Mara stopped. Ready for what? The woman pulled the silver pendant from beneath her cloak. To meet her. Mara's breath caught. Where is my mother? Her aunt looked toward the floor. Below us. The stone split open, revealing a hidden staircase. She has been waiting in the chamber beneath the Capitol for 3 years. Mara stared into the darkness. Why didn't she come for me? Her aunt's voice softened. Because the woman you remember as your mother died 3 years ago. Mara's heart stopped. What? The woman below is what remained after the council took her memories. Lucian stepped forward. They erased her. Not entirely. The aunt looked at Mara. She kept one memory. Mara whispered, which one? The woman smiled sadly. You. Mara descended the staircase before anyone could stop her. Lucian followed despite the pain in his body. Adrian and Sarah came behind them. At the bottom was a small chamber illuminated by a single lantern. A woman sat beside a table, her back turned toward them. Her hair was dark, streaked with silver. Her shoulders were thinner than Mara remembered. She slowly turned. Mara stopped breathing. The woman's eyes widened. Her lips trembled. Mara. Mara could not move. Mother. Ilara stood. For a moment neither spoke. Then Mara crossed the room and threw her arms around her. Ilara collapsed against her, sobbing into her hair. I thought you were dead, Mara whispered. I know. Why did you leave me? Because they would have killed you. You could have told me. I tried. Ilara pulled back and touched Mara's face. Every year I tried to remember how to reach you. Mara wiped her tears. And now? Ilara looked past her toward Lucian. Fear entered her expression. Now I remember everything. Lucian stood motionless. Ilara's eyes filled with sorrow. You have to leave. Mara turned. Why? Ilara whispered, because the council didn't erase my memories to stop me from finding you. Her gaze fixed on Lucian. They erased them to stop me from remembering what he really is. Lucian's expression tightened. What am I? Ilara looked at Mara. The first guardian. The chamber went silent. And the last one. Then the lantern went out. Darkness swallowed the chamber so completely that Mara could no longer see her own hands, and for one terrible instant she heard nothing from anyone around her, not even breathing, until a metallic click sounded somewhere behind Ilara and a voice whispered, Do not move. Mara recognized the voice immediately. Cassian. How did you get down here? Adrian demanded. A torch flared at the far end of the chamber, revealing Cassian standing beside a stone archway with 6 armed soldiers behind him. Blood covered his armor, and his normally composed face had become almost feral. You were always going to come here, he said. The only question was whether you would arrive before I did. Lucian stepped forward. Stay behind me. Ilara laughed bitterly. Still protecting her. Lucian glanced at her. Yes. You don't understand what you are protecting her from. Then explain. Ilara's gaze shifted to Mara. Your bond has awakened the first guardian's power, but it has also awakened the seal beneath the Capitol. If Mara reaches the throne chamber before the eclipse, every dormant Moonfang relic will activate. Cassian smiled. And then? The Northern Territories will belong to whoever controls her. Mara looked at him. You keep saying controls. Have you ever considered asking what I want? Want? Cassian sneered. You are carrying the authority of generations. Personal desire stopped mattering the moment your blood awakened. Mara's anger rose, but Ilara caught her wrist. Don't give him your power. Mara looked down. Why? Because he wants you angry. Cassian raised his sword. The girl is learning. Adrian moved between them. You won't touch her. Cassian laughed. You sound like your brother. Adrian's jaw tightened. What happened to the rest of the council? Dead. Everyone froze. Cassian's smile disappeared. Your mother was not the only prisoner beneath this city. When the palace collapsed, the old council tried to flee through the eastern tunnels. They were intercepted. Lucian's eyes narrowed. By whom? Cassian looked at Ilara. Her people. Mara turned toward her mother. You have an army. Not an army, Ilara said. A contingency. A deep rumble traveled through the floor. Then came the sound of hundreds of claws striking stone somewhere beneath them. Cassion's soldiers looked at one another uneasily. Ilara released Mara's wrist. I spent 3 years preparing for the day they found me. Cassian shouted, "Kill them!" The soldiers charged. The chamber erupted. Adrian intercepted the first attacker, driving him into the wall. Sarah swung her staff and released a burst of white energy that knocked 2 warriors off their feet. Lucian moved toward Cassian, but Mara saw a second soldier approaching her mother from the side. She raised her hand. The warrior froze in mid-stride. His weapon slipped from his fingers. Mara could feel his heartbeat through the bond of the room. She could feel his fear. Instead of crushing his mind, she whispered, "Leave." He stared at her. "What?" "Leave." He dropped his sword and ran. 2 others followed. Cassian cursed. "Cowards." Mara stepped toward him. "No." They made a choice. Cassian attacked. Mara expected him to strike at her, but he went for Ilara. Mara intercepted him. Their weapons collided with a crack that echoed through the chamber. Cassian was stronger than he looked. He drove Mara backward, forcing her toward the edge of a circular pit that had opened in the floor. "You think restraint makes you powerful," he snarled. "It makes you predictable." Mara twisted away from his blade and struck his wrist. His sword fell. "Then why are you afraid of me?" Cassion's eyes flashed. "Because I know what happens when the Moonfang remembers." He lunged with his bare hands. Mara caught him by the throat and lifted him from the floor. She could have crushed him. The power was there. It begged for release. Cassion's eyes widened as silver light crawled across his face. "Do it," he whispered. "Become what they said you were." Mara heard another voice inside her mind. "Lucian's. Don't." She released Cassian. He crashed to the ground. "You don't get to decide who I become." The old regent looked at her in disbelief. Then the floor beneath him shattered. Cassian fell into darkness. Mara rushed to the opening, but there was no body below, only a vast underground chamber filled with moving shadows. Lucian caught her shoulder. "He's alive." "How do you know?" "Because he was smiling when he fell." A low horn sounded beneath them. Ilara's face changed. "The eclipse has begun." Mara looked upward, though there was no sky visible. "How long?" "Less than 2 hours." "Until what?" Ilara hesitated. "Until the throne opens." Mara's stomach tightened. "And if I don't reach it?" "The seal will break without you." "What happens then?" "Every suppressed Moonfang relic will choose its own master." Adrian looked toward the tunnel. "And the council?" Ilara answered, "They built their entire empire on keeping those relics buried." Lucian's expression hardened. "Then we're going to the throne." Ilara grabbed his arm. "Not you." He looked at her. "Why?" "Because the throne was designed to reject guardians." Mara frowned. "But he's the guardian." "Exactly." Ilara pointed toward the passage. "If Lucian enters the throne chamber, the relics will identify him as the original bloodline's enemy and activate the execution seal." Mara's heart dropped. "Then he stays here." Lucian shook his head. "No. You heard her. And I'm not letting you walk into that chamber alone." Ilara looked at Mara. "There is another way." She opened her satchel and removed a narrow silver chain. At its center hung a fragment of black stone. The first guardian divided his soul before he died. 1 fragment remained in the throne, 1 in the bond, and 1 in the memory line. Adrian stared at the stone. "Memory line." Ilara nodded. "You." Adrian took the fragment. The instant it touched his palm, the entire chamber filled with images. He saw generations of Ashborn ancestors, each carrying memories that did not belong to them. He saw the first guardian kneeling before the Moonfang Queen. He saw the Queen placing a hand over his heart. He saw them make a promise. Not to rule together. To prevent either bloodline from ever ruling alone. Adrian opened his eyes. The Guardian wasn't created to protect the Moonfang. "No," Ilara said. "He was created to oppose her if she became a tyrant." Mara looked at Lucian. "Then why do I feel safe with him?" Ilara's answer was quiet. "Because he has already chosen to oppose you." Mara blinked. "What?" The bond does not exist to make you obey him. It exists to ensure that you always have someone willing to tell you no. Lucian looked at Mara. I can do that. Despite everything, she almost smiled. You certainly have. A tremor shook the chamber. Stone dust fell from the ceiling. Ilara pointed toward the eastern tunnel. Go. Mara stepped forward. You're coming. No. I'm not leaving you again. Ilara touched her daughter's forehead. You already found me. That's enough. No. Mara's voice hardened. You don't get to disappear after 3 years and then tell me what's enough. Ilara stared at her, then laughed through tears. You really are my daughter. Then come with me. Ilara looked toward the tunnel. All right. They ran. The underground palace seemed to transform around them as the eclipse progressed. Ancient doors opened without being touched. Statues turned their heads. Shadows moved along the ceilings. The deeper they traveled, the more Mara could feel the presence of something enormous beneath the city. Not a wolf. Not a spirit. A memory. At last they reached a massive circular chamber. At its center stood the Moonfang throne. It was carved from white stone and surrounded by 7 empty pedestals. Above it hung a sphere of black glass containing a slowly rotating silver crescent. Mara stepped forward. The room responded immediately. The 7 pedestals ignited. Lucian stopped at the threshold. His silver markings burned. Ilara grabbed his arm. Stay back. Mara turned. I'll be fine. Lucian looked at her. That's not what I'm worried about. She smiled faintly. I know. She approached the throne. A voice emerged from the black sphere. Blood returns. Mara stopped. Who are you? The memory of the first queen. Why am I here? Because your ancestors failed. Mara frowned. Failed at what? They believed power could be controlled through rules. The sphere brightened. Rules are promises made by people who have not yet been tempted. Mara looked at the throne. Then what do you want from me? Nothing. Mara sighed. Everyone says that. The ancient voice almost seemed amused. Then you have met many liars. The throne began to rise. Beneath it was a circular chamber filled with thousands of silver chains. Each chain was attached to a memory. Mara saw wars, marriages, betrayals, sacrifices, and deaths. She saw every Moonfang ruler who had taken the throne. Most had eventually become cruel. One had destroyed an entire pack because they refused to obey. Another had ordered children taken as hostages. Another had erased the memories of a rival alpha. Mara stepped backward. They all failed. Yes. Then why give me the throne? I am not giving you anything. The sphere cracked. You must decide whether the throne deserves to exist. Mara stared at the black glass. What happens if I destroy it? The Moonfang power will scatter permanently. And the packs? They will become free. Lucian's voice came from behind her. Then destroy it. Mara turned. Ilara shook her head. Not yet. Why? Because the throne isn't the real prison. Ilara pointed toward the center of the chamber. Beneath the throne was a single silver chain leading into darkness. That's what the council has been protecting. Mara walked closer. What's down there? Ilara whispered, the first guardian. Lucian's face changed. He's alive. Not alive. She looked at Mara. Waiting. The chain snapped. A roar erupted beneath the chamber. The throne cracked. The floor opened. A gigantic figure rose from the darkness, wrapped in ancient armor, his face hidden beneath a broken silver mask. Every wolf in Mara's mind screamed at once. Lucian staggered. Adrian dropped to one knee. Ilara whispered, "He's awake." The figure removed the mask. His eyes were the same silver as Lucian's. He looked directly at Mara. Then he looked at Lucian. "My son," he said. Lucian's breath stopped. The guardian raised one hand. "You were never meant to inherit my power." His gaze shifted to Mara. "You were meant to kill me." The 7 lights beneath the ocean did not rise immediately. They remained far below the ship, enormous points of pale radiance moving slowly beneath the dark water as though something colossal had opened its eyes and was deciding whether the creatures above deserved attention. Nobody spoke. Even the sailors who had survived the impossible city seemed afraid to breathe. Mara held the broken crown in both hands. "The air," she said quietly. The voice inside the metal answered, "You were never supposed to reach the seventh city." Mara looked at the survivors. "Who are you?" "The one who inherited what your ancestors abandoned." Lucian stepped closer. "Then come out and speak." The voice laughed. "You still believe everything has to take a body." Mara felt the silver memory inside her pulse. "If you know so much, you know I don't trust voices hiding in objects." "Then throw away the crown." Mara immediately tossed it overboard. It struck the ocean and sank. For several seconds nothing happened. Then the sea around the ship began glowing. The broken crown returned to the deck without a splash. Mara stared at it. "Fine." The voice spoke again. "You cannot throw away what has already become part of you." Mara looked toward the horizon. "What do you want?" "The cities. They're gone." "Not all of them." Celine stepped forward. "How many?" "7." Mara felt a chill. "We found 7 symbols. You found 7 doors. Where are the cities?" The voice answered, "One beneath the sea. One beneath the desert. One inside the mountains. One beneath the oldest forest. One beyond the eastern ice. One beneath the capital. And one." The voice paused. "Inside you." Nobody moved. Mara felt the silver presence in her chest. "The first memory." "Yes." Adrian whispered, "Then you're not an heir." "Correct." The voice became colder. "I am the guardian of what she carries." Mara looked at Celine. "Can you remove it?" Celine shook her head. "Not without killing you." Lucian's face hardened. "Then we don't remove it." Mara nodded. "We learn to control it." The ship's captain approached. "We're running out of daylight." Mara looked at the survivors. "Take us back to the western harbor." The captain hesitated. "And the lights?" Mara glanced over the side. The 7 lights had vanished. "They can wait." They returned to land 2 days later. News of the underwater city had already spread. Thousands gathered along the harbor, demanding answers. Mara gave them none at first. Instead, she established a temporary shelter for the survivors and ordered the archives opened. People spent days identifying relatives, recovering histories, and learning that entire branches of their families had been preserved beneath the sea. Some reunions were joyful. Others were devastating. One woman discovered that her husband, whom she had mourned for 30 years, had been preserved alive for 2 centuries and had died only hours before the city collapsed. A young man learned that the ancestor he had worshipped as a hero had actually ordered the destruction of an entire village. A child found a grandmother who had been preserved as a girl and now had no idea how to be an old woman's relative. Mara watched all of it and understood why the ancient rulers had feared truth. Truth did not simplify the world. It complicated everything. One evening, Mara sat beside the harbor with Lucian. "Do you regret opening the city?" he asked. "No. Even after seeing what it did to people? Especially because of that." Lucian looked at the water. "Then what's next?" Mara was about to answer when Adrian appeared. He looked exhausted. "We found the second location." Mara stood. "Where?" "The desert." Talia joined him. "And there's another problem." "Of course there is." Talia handed Mara a letter. The seal belonged to the Southern Territories. Mara opened it. The Southern Assembly had declared her an enemy of the state. Lucian laughed. "That's fast." Mara folded the letter. "Why?" Adrian answered, "They claim you are carrying an ancient weapon." Mara touched her chest. "Technically true. They're mobilizing." Mara looked toward the harbor. "Then we don't go south." Adrian nodded. "The desert is east." "Exactly." They left at dawn. The journey across the desert took nearly 3 weeks. The landscape became increasingly strange as they approached the second city. Compass needles spun. Shadows moved in the wrong direction. At night, Mara heard voices calling her name from beneath the sand. On the 17th day, their guide disappeared. No footprints remained. His horse stood alone beside the camp. Talia wanted to turn back. Mara refused. We came this far. That doesn't mean we should continue. You're right. Mara looked toward the dunes. But we need to know what we're dealing with. At sunset, the desert opened. A staircase descended into the earth. Unlike the underwater city, this entrance was dry and warm. Symbols covered the walls. Mara recognized one immediately. It was the same symbol the child had drawn in the northern village, an open circle. This city was built after the first collapse, Celine said. Why? To study choice. Mara frowned. Choice. The first city preserved memory. This one preserved decisions. Adrian looked uneasy. What does that mean? A voice answered from the darkness. Every choice you could have made is stored here. Mara stepped into the chamber. Doors opened along the walls. Behind each door was another version of her life. In one, she had married Adrian. In another, she had become queen. In another, Lucian had died. In another, Mara had never met either man. In another, she had remained in her childhood village and lived a peaceful life. She watched herself grow old surrounded by people she had never known. Lucian stood beside her. This place is cruel. Mara shook her head. No. It's honest. How is that better? Because it shows us that every life costs something. Adrian opened one door and stared at the version of himself inside. That version was older, powerful, and surrounded by admirers. I could have become this. Mara looked at him. Would you have been happy? Adrian watched the image for a long time. No. He closed the door. I would have been impressive. Mara smiled. That's not the same thing. Deeper inside the city, they found a chamber filled with thousands of mirrors. A woman stood in the center. She wore no crown. Welcome. Mara approached. Are you the heir? No. The guardian? No. Then who are you? The question. Mara frowned. That's not an answer. The woman smiled. It is here. She pointed toward the mirrors. Every empire begins with a question. Who should rule? Who deserves power? Who is worth saving? Who must sacrifice? The first city answered with memory. The second answered with choice. And the answer? There is no answer. Mara looked at the mirrors. Then why preserve all these choices? Because people confuse possibility with destiny. The woman touched one mirror. It showed Mara standing on a throne. You have spent your life fighting predictions. She touched another. Mara was alone. But you still fear making the wrong choice. Another mirror showed Lucian dead. Mara's face tightened. Yes. Why? Because I love him. The woman smiled. Then you understand the problem. What problem? Love creates the illusion that there is a correct future. Mara stared at Lucian. He was watching her. There isn't one. No. Mara turned back. Then how do we choose? By accepting that every choice closes a door. The woman stepped aside. Your city is not asking you to find the perfect future. Mara understood. It's asking whether I can live with an imperfect one. The woman nodded. Exactly. Suddenly every mirror shattered. The entire city shook. A voice came from above. The air has awakened. Mara looked upward. The voice inside her chest answered. Yes. The woman disappeared. Adrian shouted, we have company. Sand poured through the ceiling. Shapes emerged. Warriors made of glass. They carried weapons formed from crystallized memories. The first attacked. Lucian blocked the strike. The blade shattered against his sword. Mara unleashed silver energy, but the glass warriors absorbed it. They're feeding on memory. Celine shouted. Then don't give them any. Mara looked around. Everyone fight physically. The battle erupted. Talia fought two at once. Sarah used the walls as cover. Adrian abandoned his memory abilities and relied entirely on his sword. Mara moved through the chamber, using speed rather than magic. One glass warrior lunged. She ducked, seized its arm, and drove it into the floor. It shattered. Another came from behind. Lucian intercepted it. "You owe me." Mara kicked a fragment aside. "Put it on my account." They fought deeper into the city until they reached a massive circular door. Above it were the words, "The future is not yours to OWN." Mara placed her palm against it. The door opened. Inside was a single chair. Sitting in it was a young man. Mara recognized his face immediately. It was the same face she had seen in the crown. "The heir," she whispered. He stood. Finally. Lucian raised his sword. The young man laughed. "You still think I'm here to fight? Aren't you?" "No." He looked at Mara. "I'm here to surrender." Everyone froze. "Why?" Mara asked. The young man looked terrified. "Because I have seen what happens when I win." Mara lowered her weapon. "Tell me." He swallowed. "The seventh city doesn't contain the final enemy." "Then what does?" He pointed toward Mara. "You." The room went silent. "What do you mean?" "The first memory chose you because it cannot exist without a host." He looked at the silver glow beneath her skin. "If you reach the seventh city, it will awaken completely." Mara stared at him. "And then?" "Then every memory in the world becomes yours." Lucian stepped closer. "She wouldn't use it." The young man shook his head. "She wouldn't have to." Mara felt the first memory stir inside her. For a moment, every person on Earth seemed to appear in her mind. Millions of thoughts. Millions of fears. Millions of hopes. She fell to her knees. Lucian caught her. "Mara." She heard him from impossibly far away. Then she heard everyone. Every voice. Every memory. Every life. The ancient child whispered inside her. "Now you understand." Mara closed her eyes. "Yes." The young heir watched her. "Can you control it?" Mara opened her eyes. "No." He looked relieved. "Good." Mara stood. "But I can choose what I do with it." She turned toward the final map etched into the floor. 7 cities. 6 revealed. 1 remained hidden. The symbol was shaped like a wolf's eye. Beneath it was a single word. Home. Mara stared at it for a long time. The 7th city isn't somewhere else. Lucian followed her gaze. "Where is it?" Mara touched her chest. "Inside the first place the memory ever lived." Celine whispered, "The original sanctuary." Mara nodded. "The place where the first queen was born." Adrian looked toward the western horizon. "Then that's where we go." Mara looked at the others. "No." They stared at her. "I go." Lucian immediately shook his head. "Not alone." Mara took his hand. "I didn't say alone." She looked toward the desert sky. "I said home." Far beneath them, something ancient opened its eyes. And for the first time since the cycle began, the voice inside Mara did not whisper. It spoke clearly. "Come home, Mara." The desert trembled. 7 distant bells rang across the world. Then the sky turned silver. The silver sky remained for 3 days. During that time, no sunlight reached the desert, yet nobody became cold. The entire world seemed suspended beneath a vast luminous ceiling, and wherever Mara traveled, people stopped what they were doing and looked upward. Some claimed they could hear voices. Others saw memories that did not belong to them. Children described places they had never visited. Elderly wolves suddenly remembered childhood friends whose names had been forgotten for generations. Across the territories, the old boundaries began disappearing from maps because cartographers discovered that roads themselves were changing. Mara understood what was happening. The first memory was no longer contained inside her alone. It was leaking into the world. On the 4th morning, the silver sky cracked like glass. A single beam of ordinary sunlight struck the desert, illuminating the place where the final map had appeared. Mara stood in the center of the crater with Lucian beside her. Adrian, Elara, Celine, Talia, Sarah, and the young heir watched from a short distance away. The heir had finally told them his name was Kale. He had been raised inside the second city and trained to inherit its memories, but when the city began collapsing, he had escaped into the crown. He had been waiting for someone capable of breaking the system without replacing it. Mara looked at him. You knew I would come. Kale shook his head. I hoped. That's different. Very. Mara glanced toward the crater. A staircase was appearing beneath the sand. It was not made of stone. It seemed carved directly from darkness. Lucian examined the first step. How far down? Mara answered, far enough. He sighed. I hate when you say things like that. They began descending. The others followed until the staircase narrowed. At the bottom they reached a cavern larger than any structure Mara had ever seen. The ceiling was impossible to locate. Hundreds of thousands of silver threads hung from it, descending like roots. Each thread carried a memory. Mara saw tiny scenes inside them, a mother holding a newborn, a soldier dropping a weapon, a farmer planting seeds, two lovers arguing over nothing important, a child stealing fruit and laughing while running away. Ordinary lives. The memories were not grand. That was what made them precious. At the center of the cavern stood an enormous stone door. No symbols decorated it. No warnings. No prophecy. Mara approached. This is it. Lucian looked at her. How do you know? Because I don't feel anything. He frowned. That's your clue? Yes. She touched the door. It opened without resistance. Beyond it was a small room. A table. 2 chairs. A fireplace. A bed. A window overlooking a valley. It looked like an ordinary home. Mara stepped inside. This is where it started. Ilara entered behind her and began crying. I remember this. Mara turned. You were here. Once. Ilara touched the wall. Your grandfather brought me here when I was pregnant with you. Mara stared at her. Why? He wanted me to see the truth. Ilara looked toward the window. This was the original home of the first queen. Mara examined the room. She lived here. Before she was queen. On the table sat an old wooden box. Mara opened it. Inside was a collection of letters. The first was written in a familiar hand. The first queen had written it not as a ruler, but as a frightened young woman. She described living in this valley with her family. She had no crown. No armies. No magical inheritance. She simply had a gift for remembering people. When someone died, she could preserve their memories. At first, she used the gift to comfort grieving families. Then rulers discovered what she could do. They offered her wealth, protection, authority. Eventually they demanded that she preserve the memories of kings. She refused. They threatened her family. She surrendered. That was the beginning. The memory system grew from one act of fear. Mara read the final letter aloud. If anyone ever finds this room, remember this. I was not corrupted by power because I wanted power. I was corrupted because I believed I could use power temporarily to protect the people I loved. There is no temporary throne. There is only the moment when protection becomes control. Mara lowered the letter. She knew. Celine nodded. And nobody listened. Mara looked at the empty fireplace. What happened to her? Ilara answered softly, she disappeared. No. What happened? Ilara hesitated. She became the first memory. Mara felt the presence inside her stir. The silver light rose beneath her skin. The room changed. The furniture dissolved. The walls became transparent. A woman appeared beside the window. She was young, tired, and dressed in simple clothes. Mara knew her instantly. The first queen. You finally came. Mara stared. You've been waiting. For a very long time. Why me? The woman smiled. Because you were the first who understood that refusing power is not enough. Mara frowned. What else is there? You must understand why people keep reaching for it. Mara looked toward Lucian. Fear. Yes. Fear of losing people. Fear of chaos. Fear of being forgotten. The queen nodded. And what defeats fear? Mara thought of the villages. The survivors. The children. The people who had chosen imperfect freedom over perfect control. Trust. The queen smiled. Exactly. She stepped toward Mara. You cannot control the world's memories. I know. You cannot guarantee everyone's choices. I know. You cannot prevent every tragedy. Mara's eyes filled with tears. I know. The queen touched her forehead. Then you are ready. The entire cavern shook. The silver threads began breaking. Every memory inside Mara surged outward. She screamed. Lucian caught her before she fell. Mara. She could hear him, but his voice was surrounded by millions of others. She saw every life connected to the memory system. Every preserved person. Every forgotten village. Every erased name. Every ruler who had used memory as a weapon. Every ordinary person who had suffered because someone else believed control was necessary. Then Mara saw the future. Not one future. Thousands. In one, she became queen. In another, she destroyed all magic and left the world ordinary but empty of its oldest history. In another, she died and the first memory passed into Lucian. In another, the territories fought for centuries over the ruins of the cities. In another, the world united peacefully. None were guaranteed. None were destined. They were possibilities. Mara opened her eyes. I understand. Lucian held her hand. What? The system doesn't need a ruler. Then what does it need? A choice. Mara stood. The first queen appeared again. What will you choose? Mara looked at the silver threads. I choose to give memory back to everyone. The queen's expression changed. All of it? Yes. That will be painful. Probably. It will change everything. It already has. The queen smiled. Then do it. Mara placed both hands against the floor. Silver light erupted from her body. The cavern shook so violently that stones fell from the ceiling. Across the world, people stopped. A fisherman remembered his mother's voice. A soldier remembered the name of a man he had killed. A woman in a distant village remembered that her family had once belonged to a kingdom that no longer existed. Children dreamed of ancestors. Elders remembered forgotten songs. Histories returned, but so did uncomfortable truths. Governments discovered crimes committed by their founders. Families learned secrets. Old heroes became complicated. Old villains were sometimes revealed as victims. No one received a perfect history. They received the truth. Mara screamed as the final memories left her. Then everything went dark. Lucian held her body. Mara. No response. He pressed his forehead against hers. Please. Her fingers moved. She whispered, did it work? Lucian laughed through tears. You tell me. She opened her eyes. The silver light was gone. Completely. Mara looked at her hands. They were ordinary. No glowing veins. No ancient power. No voices. She could hear only the people in the room. It's quiet. Lucian smiled. Good. Wonderful. The first queen stood nearby, fading. Mara looked at her. What happens to you? I finally get to rest. Where? The queen smiled. Where every memory belongs. She disappeared. The cavern began collapsing. Ilara shouted, we need to leave. Everyone ran. Mara and Lucian followed. They climbed the staircase as the entire underground structure disintegrated behind them. When they reached the surface, dawn was breaking. The silver sky was gone. Ordinary blue filled the horizon. Mara stood in the desert and breathed deeply. She had never appreciated ordinary air so much. Adrian approached. It's done. Mara looked at him. Is it? He smiled. I think so. Kale looked toward the horizon. I can no longer hear the cities. Mara nodded. Neither can I. Then what am I supposed to do? Mara looked at him. Live. He laughed softly. That's all. That's harder than it sounds. Talia approached carrying a bundle of documents. The territories are already calling emergency councils. Mara sighed. Of course. Lucian grinned. You wanted ordinary life. I still do. You may have to wait. Mara looked toward the distant mountains. Maybe ordinary life isn't a place. What is it? A choice we make every morning. Lucian took her hand. Then choose it with me. She smiled. I will. They returned home months later. There were no grand ceremonies. No crowds. No crown. Mara refused every title offered to her. Lucian refused every military position. Adrian helped establish a federation based on rotating councils. Talia became one of its strongest advocates. Sarah opened a school where children could study history without propaganda. Celine traveled from territory to territory teaching people how to recognize memory manipulation. Ilara returned to the valley where Mara had grown up and planted an orchard. Kale became a historian. He spent years recording the newly recovered histories, determined that no ruler would ever again be able to erase them. As for Mara, she finally got the life she had wanted. She repaired fences. She argued with bakers. She learned to cook badly. She walked through markets without guards. She traveled with Lucian simply because they wanted to see places they had never seen. Sometimes people recognized her. Sometimes they thanked her. Sometimes they blamed her for decisions she had never made. She accepted all of it. One autumn morning, Mara stood beneath the orchard trees while Ilara harvested apples. Lucian arrived carrying a basket. Your mother says I'm stealing. You are. I'm helping. By eating them? Quality control. Mara laughed. They walked toward the house together. The valley was peaceful. Not perfect. Never perfect. But real. That evening, Mara sat beside the window and opened the first queen's final letter one last time. The words were unchanged. She had spent years believing the story was about power. It wasn't. It was about fear. The fear of losing people. The fear of being forgotten. The fear that if you didn't control the future would destroy you. Mara finally understood the answer the first queen had never been able to find. You could not defeat fear by becoming powerful enough to control everything. You defeated it by accepting that you couldn't control everything and choosing to love people anyway. Mara closed the letter. Lucian looked up from his book. Finished? Yes. What did you learn? She smiled. That I don't want another adventure. He raised an eyebrow. Really? Really? A knock sounded at the door. They looked at each other. Another knock. Mara groaned. Don't answer it. Lucian laughed. You can't ignore destiny. Watch me. The knock came again. This time a child's voice called from outside. Mara, there's a wolf in the garden. Mara stood immediately. That's not destiny. Lucian followed her. No. That's my mother. They opened the door. A little girl stood there, pointing toward the orchard. A young wolf was tangled in a basket of apples. Mara walked over, freed it, and carried it toward the woods. The child watched. Are you the queen? Mara smiled. No. Were you ever? Mara looked back at the house, at Lucian, at Ilara laughing in the doorway, at the valley beyond them. No. The child frowned.